Hello and welcome back to a new syntax lecture. In the previous lecture we looked at evidence against the flat structure and for Xbar structures. Constituency tests helped us a great deal in determining that our flat structure was not powerful enough to explain the facts. We suggested that, for example, in an NP like the man with a book, that this flat structure was not able to show us how we can make a constituent out of only man and with a book. The other alternative was to use intermediate structures, which we called here an N-bar, as you can see here. And this way, if we wanted man and with a book to form a constituent, we say that they do form a constituent under N-bar. Now the question is, if you notice here, I have another intermediate N-bar placed right here. Was this necessary? To find out, let's look with more detail into what Xbar theory has to offer. So under Xbar theory, this is what an NP like the ugly box of crayons with 10 colors would look like. Now if you notice here, there's 1, 2, 3 different intermediate levels. We call these levels the intermediate projections or bar projections or levels. The reason why we call them bar projections or levels because we add a bar as so to these levels. And what these bars show is that they are just intermediate levels. We are not at the top and we're not at the bottom. Now the head of the phrase, which is this noun, is, as you would expect, called the head of the phrase. This head projects its features upwards, and that is why this is called an N-bar, not, say for example, a V-bar for verb or adjective bar. This is an N-bar precisely because the head of the phrase is an N. So these features percolate upwards and upwards until you get to the maximum part that you can get to, which is the phrase level. And this phrase level is called the maximal projection. We call it the maximal projection because as this head is projecting or percolating its features upwards, this is the maximal place that we can get. Great, so now we've identified 3 levels. This is the head, these 3 are intermediate levels, and this is what we call the maximal projection. Now let's look at this structure a bit more carefully. Why is it that this structure is broken up in this way? Why do we need 3 different bar levels here? Are they all necessary? Are they all justified? In fact, they are. And we're going to use our constituency tests again to prove this. The noun phrase, the ugly box of crayons with 10 colors. We can easily replace box of crayons alone with 1, can't we? So we could say, for example, I want the ugly box of crayons with 10 colors. Not the nice one with 20 colors. So 1 here seems to replace only box of crayons, and it leaves out 10 colors and the and ugly. Great, so now we know that this really does need its own level, so that this can form a constituent on its own. Okay, how about the second level? Is this level justified? Well, we have to ask then, everything under this level, do they form a constituent on their own without everything else? Let's see. I can easily say I want the ugly box of crayons with 10 colors, not the nice one. And again, 1 here replaces all of this. So yes, this level is also justified. How about this last N-bar level? Is that justified? Let's change our determiner here to this. Now we get this ugly box of crayons with 10 colors. So let's say you have 2 ugly boxes of crayons with 10 colors. This one's closest to you, so you call it this. That one's further away from you, so we're going to use that. And then someone would say, I want this box of crayons with 10 colors, not that one. So quite clearly I can say that 1, and this 1 here replaces all of this. Well, all of this must, of course, become a constituent on its own without the determiner. How else are we going to do that without this N-bar level, which would separate ugly box of crayons with 10 colors from the determiner? So now it seems that all of these levels are justified. And the way we used our constituency tests is a really good method to figure out which parts of a phrase or a sentence must be considered constituents. Now let's talk about the specific order of things that we have here. If you notice, the prepositional phrase of crayons is closest to the head noun box. This prepositional phrase is what we call a complement. It functions as a complement to the head noun box. We also have the prepositional phrase with 10 colors and the adjective phrase ugly, but these two are not complements. These are what we call adjuncts. The last thing we have is the determiner. This determiner serves as a specifier. So now we have three things: the complement, the adjuncts, and the specifier. What's the difference? Well, semantically, the complement, as the name kind of suggests, completes the meaning of the noun. So for example, if I had, again, two boxes here, there was one box of crayons and there was one box of tools, and I wanted to ask you for the box of crayons. Would it suffice to just say, please give me the box? Of course not. To understand that I mean this box, I have to say of crayons. So it's kind of obligatory to say the complement. It's obligatory because without saying it, you wouldn't understand what I meant. So don't get me wrong here. I could easily say this ugly box. That's not ungrammatical. It's fine. But you're not going to understand what I meant. So a complement is obligatory. It kind of completes the meaning of the noun. Syntactically, the complement is the closest to the head noun. If you notice, they form together one constituent, as so. Now what about the adjuncts? Well, adjuncts, as the name suggests, is something that is extra. It gives extra information. It is optional. It's not necessary for you to understand the meaning. Of course, in some cases, it might be necessary to get the meaning correct, but they are still considered not essential parts of the sentence or of the phrase. A syntactic difference now between adjuncts and complements, on the other hand, is that, recall, complements are the closest thing to the head. They form a constituent with the head. But the adjuncts are further away. Adjuncts can never be sisters to the head like this. So they are further away from the head, as you can see. Not only that, but if you notice, you can have more than one adjunct. So we have one here, we have a second one here, and we can also add a third one and a fourth one. For example, if we were to add another prepositional phrase here, which specifies the location of the box, this would also serve as another adjunct. Of course, in this case, we're going to need some intermediate N-bar level to capture this. So now again, we have a third adjunct, as you can see. Next up, we have the specifier. Now the specifier is usually reserved for determiners, as you can see here. The specifier is the first thing that branches out of the maximal projection. So this is the first thing. Next up, we get everything else. Now let's look at a few more syntactic differences between specifier, the adjunct, and the complement. The specifier, if you recall our lecture on structural relations, is the daughter of the phrase projection or the maximal projection, and it is sister to N-bar. So let's write a rule that would generate our specifiers in NP. So let's call this NP specifier rule, NP adjunct rule, and NP complement rule. So to generate an NP specifier, you have to be daughter of NP, sister to N-bar. To generate an adjunct, which is like this, for example, you have to be daughter of N-bar, sister of N-bar. So daughter of N-bar and sister of N-bar. To be a complement, finally, you have to be daughter of n bar, but sister to n, or the head. So now the differences are quite clear. The specifier is the daughter of np, sister to n bar. The adjunct is both a daughter of n bar and a sister of n bar, and the complement is also a daughter of n bar, but it's sister to an n, or a head. Now if you recall from our previous lectures, we spoke about the phrase structure rules. We did mention a phrase structure rule for noun phrases, but now with this new structure, it looks like we need a new rule. So what would the NP rule look like? Well, a noun phrase NP seems to give rise to only two things, a determiner and an n bar level. So we would have an optional determiner plus an n bar level. What about n bar? N bar gives you an adjective phrase and another n bar. This adjective phrase is optional. Or we can get an n bar like this plus a pp. So an n bar plus a pp. And notice that the ordering is a bit different here. But also, n bar can also give us the head and the complement. So also n bar can give us the obligatory head in and an optional complement, a prepositional phrase which functions as a complement. Great, so in this lecture, we've introduced Xbar levels, we discussed the noun phrase NP in particular, and we talked about the rules that generate the noun phrase, repeated here, and we also talked about the different functions that we can find within the noun phrase, which were specifier, adjunct, and complement. We said we can only have one complement, but we can have several adjuncts. And we said that the specifier was in most cases reserved for the determiner. In the next lecture, we're going to follow the same idea, but instead of looking at the noun phrase, we're going to look at the verb phrase, adjective phrase, adverb phrase, and a prepositional phrase. Stay tuned.